Hi, everyone. This is Isa Tees.
And this is Raphael, and welcome back to Relationships Done Different. Today we have a really fun show, and the topic is, do you listen? Do you really listen to your partner? And what are the ramifications of that? It's going to be really, really, really fun. Isa Tees?
Oh boy, is it going to be fun, because we're going to start off with actually a transparency story.
Uh-oh, I can think I'm going to leave the room right now.
You might want to. You might. Okay, so yesterday, Raphael and I
knew it. I knew it.
It's so perfect for this show.
You were going to tell a story. You
This
didn't
is a
say
story.
it was about me.
Yeah, well, I also didn't say that it wasn't about us, and I just think is a perfect example.
So we practice, by the way, you teach what you need to learn.
Yeah. So yesterday we are going to the grocery store, New Seasons, which is, for those of you that don't live in this area, it's just like Whole Foods. And we had gone and run some errands prior to that, and I was pretty darn hungry. And when we left Costco, he said, "You want to do something else, whatever it was?" And I said, "No, I'm really hungry. Let's go do the shopping." So we go over to New Season. He's ready to burst. What?
Not exactly what you said.
That's not what you heard.
Okay, that's the problem. That's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, we're already talking about it. So what I said and what he heard weren't exactly the same. So from where it is that I come from, I said, "I'm really hungry. Let's go shop." He said, "Well, let's just eat here. You're hungry and whatever." And I said, I actually don't even remember responding to that. But when we get in the store, he said something like, "Well, let's go over and order our food." And I said, "Well, I don't want to eat here." And he's looking a little perplexed, like, "What the heck? You just said you were really hungry." And I said, "I don't want to eat here. I want to get our stuff and go home." So I'm really clear in my head that we are going to get our food and we're going to go home. Now, his perception was very different.
For sure. Very, very different.
His perception, although unknown to me, was that we were going to eat at the store. He decided that because I said I was hungry, that we were eating there. And when I said I didn't want to eat there, he did not hear that. And what occurred is that I'm wandering around the store, doing my thing, buying my stuff because he gets his own card, I get mine. After a while, he phones me in the store and says, "I've got your food," because what we did is they make wok there. So I made my wok, he made his, and then we were waiting for it to cook, and I went off to do shopping. And so he calls me and he said, "I got your food." And I said, "Okay, super, great, thank you." And I just kept on shopping, doing whatever it is that I needed or was wanting to do. He's over here having a heart attack, you guys. I'm not sure what happened to him because I'm off in another part of the store. And after a while, I call him and I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm in the dining room eating." And I said,
"Waiting for you for the last 15 minutes.
"Yeah, well, it's because you thought I was coming there and I had no intention of going there." So the point of this story is necessarily just show you that we're dealing with all the same things other people deal with. It's also that we don't hear what we think the other person says. We hear what it is that we want to hear or what we're attached to. So first of all, please recognize that everybody has selective hearing. Selective hearing means that you make a decision about the way something is, and it pretty much doesn't matter what else somebody else may say, because you've already tuned them out. You've already decided that this is what is happening. And that's why there is a very important distinction between listening and hearing. It's very important to recognize that you may listen to the words, but you're not hearing what it is that they're saying. And you might want to just take a moment right now and think about that yourself. Think about the last time that somebody said something to you and the circumstances were kind of like us yesterday, not exactly the way you thought they were. So in other words, there was a quote-unquote miscommunication. But remember that miscommunication comes because we may listen, but rarely do we hear. And I'll give you some remedies for that in a minute, but I know that Mr. Smiley Face over here wants to just say something. He's grimacing, tightening his lips, and those are body signs, by the way, that somebody is going through something internally. So that's just another clue about what happens. So go ahead, honey.
Did you mention that I was doing the cycle of 5 to relax my body parts?
You didn't tell me that, actually. Cycle of 5 is a breathing technique that I frequently talk about, and many times on these podcasts, where you breathe in through your nose very slowly to the count of 5. Then you hold the energy at the top of your head or between your eyebrows to the count of 5. And then
don't fall asleep
you exhale very slowly to the count of 5 through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And when you do that 5 times, it's amazing how miraculously you are able to see things differently. So I have a feeling that maybe you needed to do the cycle of 5 times, not just 5.
No, I did it 10 times. Okay, so getting past that, just suffice this conversation to say that what Issa Tease just said a few moments ago is not what I heard, and that was quite obvious. And I think she said certain things that maybe she didn't recall, but again, it doesn't matter. But the point of what I wanted to say now is, in 2 weeks, I decided that I wanted to practice what we were going to be speaking to you in about 2 weeks. And the topic of that show will be, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? So just going through my reaction to this whole thing, we each had our own view. We each think we're right. So what difference does it make? So I just realized that this whole thing was just there for me to decide how I want to be. And I decided that I would rather be happy than right, even though I know I'm right.
And it only took him, 12, 14 hours to get there.
Well, the first 8 or 10 were kind of rough, I must admit.
That's okay. One of the things that we can gauge ourselves is how quickly we can move through our triggers. And you might want to do that just for a fun thing, is when you get triggered, notice how long it takes you and start to gauge your own personal mastery over when you can move from months, maybe years for people, years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, however it is. And the quicker you can move through. And by the way, those triggers will be of paramount interest for you, because if it takes you longer, then you know that you're hitting something very deep and very core. But let's get back to the subject.
Good idea.
The subject is listening to your partner. So when somebody is speaking to you, now this is just come to reality statement for yourself, an introspection, if you will, to really be honest with yourself. Nobody's watching, nobody's listening to you. And I'd like you to really think about, really contemplate when people speak to you. How present are you? Are you listening to their words and putting them in a place that makes sense to you or is definitive for you about what it is that their message is? Or are you already jumping ahead with your answer? Your perfect answer, I might add. You know the answer, so what the heck? You don't have to listen to anything they say.
How did you know my answer was perfect?
So when you are interchanging with someone, what you do is what most everyone does, and I'm not going to say an absolute, but I've been around a lot of people in my life, and I see this pretty characteristically, and I have done this once or twice in my life, so I know exactly of what it is that I speak. And what that means is somebody will be speaking, and I will already have devised the most amazing response. I mean, I can respond in a way that will be so incredible And they may have shifted exactly what it is that they were speaking, but I might have heard the first 3, 4, 5 words. And then I left the scene, if you will, energetically, mentally, emotionally.
I.e. left my body.
Yeah. And then when the rest of the sentence or the message was given, nobody was home. So think about that. Have you ever been speaking to somebody? They're telling you something. You hear the first part of their message and you take that and then you run to the desert with that and make up your response and you determine what it really means. You go back to the past and you assign it some kind of additional meaning based on what it is that they probably said to you at some other time. And then without even knowing that you're doing this, it takes you back to some past experience where your mother said something that pretty much triggered you about that. And then you get into the story about, well, if they really feel that way, then why are they even with me? And my mother did that. My father never liked me either. And it's amazing where we go. And so we're off on our travels. And then the person says to you, okay, like you were actually listening, because your eyes, even though they're glazed over and they don't see that, it's still there in the position where you were, sitting, standing, whatever. And they say, okay. And because you don't want to appear to be as vacant as you were, you go, yeah, got it. So you go your separate ways. And the person who was communicating now thinks, because of what they said and what they felt that they knew was being said, thinks everything is the way it is that they think they said, because the person didn't say anything adverse to that. So the other person who left town, so to speak, energetically or mentally and or emotionally, they have had their whole thing set up in their head about how things are, rather than how things really are. And therefore, a big gap occurs. And communication, as we said last week when we were speaking about communication, is, in my experience, the number one issue in relationships. And it's really challenging when you are with someone who does not have the awareness and the knowledge of how to acquiesce or how to look internally and see the way they are being. They instead get very stuck on what it is that they are convinced positively that they said or didn't say or whatever. Does that make sense?
It does. What do we do about it?
Well, that's a really good question.
Because I think the biggest part of the problem is awareness that we're even in that leaving town place. We're here, but we're not here.
It's very true. Awareness is the number one key. You hear me speak about this probably on every single episode, and I won't disappoint you today because I'm going to say it again. Awareness is the key. The next question is, how do I stay aware? Well, you stay aware when you're communicating with somebody. You really want to get what it is that they're saying, and you want to be able to experience where they're at to the degree that you can either have compassion or some kind of appropriate response. And one of the things you do is you look into their eyes. You're not looking away, you're not looking down, you're not looking at your phone, you're not doing anything, but you are physically there looking in their eyes. Now, I know some of you are saying, oh yeah, well, what if I'm on the phone? Well, one of the things you can do is you can do FaceTime or something. But if that's not likely or happening, then it's a matter of being really present in your body, which is another thing to do when you are communicating with someone, even in person. So what does that mean? It means that you're curling your toes. You are feeling your kneecaps. You're aware of how your fingers are feeling. You're aware of where your shoulders are positioned. Are they back? Are you hunched over? Are you really, really in your body is what the bottom line to that is. And even though you may have that flittering thought, you come back to really hearing the person speak. Now, here is a number one important clue. And this is so important. And this is one of the things that we realized through our little adventure yesterday that we needed and are committed to doing is we ask for feedback probably all heard that before, but it's really an important experience. So yesterday when we were standing there in New Seasons, instead of saying, okay, what would have been wise for me to do is to say, okay, what is it that you heard me say? Or how are the plans based on what it is that we've communicated here? And I get feedback from him, because if I had done that, I would have very readily found out that he thought we were eating there. And at that point, I could have gotten more clear with myself and with him that my desire was to not stay. And I've watched this occur with so many people. And one of the things that we're pretty good at is we'll talk to each other about something that's up. It might be a business issue. It might be a whatever. And we talk about it, and then we talk about it, and then we kind of go off and do whatever we're doing. We never came to a conclusion. We never came to a place that was result-oriented, because maybe we weren't exactly on the same page, or maybe we didn't feel clear enough within ourselves about what we wanted. And this unfinished business is a very, very important thing to recognize in many areas of your life, because it's happening. And it has to do with being present with your communication with yourself and with others. So as the example that I was just giving, that sometimes something will come up, or starting a new 12-week online program sometime, and we're also looking at doing another year-long program. So we have these things, all these different options, choices, decisions, and things like that that we're making. And so we talk about it a little bit, and we don't come to the meeting of the minds exactly. We're not in conflict with each other. It's just that we're not positive that that's what we want to do in that particular moment. So what we do is we just kind of we go south, work on another project, or we go do this, or we go do that. And if we want it to be really clean, what would be wise for us to say is to bring completion. So these are the words I want you to hear. Come to completion with all your thoughts. Come to completion with everything you do. Come to completion. And completion means that you're clear that you're either not going to stay present to that, or you are going to, and you feed back to yourself or to the other person or to the group or to whomever it is that you're in interaction with, and you make sure that everybody is on the same page. So when we've got a Google Doc up and we say, okay, we look at this and we look at this about this project, and it's not gelled exactly where we want it to be yet. What would be ideal for us is that we actually say to each other, okay, I just want to be clear here that we're agreeing that we're not totally clear about this. What's the best time for us to come back together and complete that?
And I was just thinking exactly the same thing, to pick another date or a continuation date to continue it rather than to just move forward. And the problem that you're discussing is that when neither of us have a clarity that either we both can get on board with, or we ourselves don't know what we want to do. So we're dealing with 5 different ideas floating around for this particular project you're speaking about. What's the best course? And sometimes I think what I'm feeling, if I really were honest with myself, it's like overwhelming, and I don't know what to do next. And you look at me and you don't know what to do next. Then what do? We go out for coffee.
Yeah, we don't walk for coffee because I don't drink coffee. But at any rate, it's at that moment that what's powerful is I say, I'm not really clear yet to take the next step. And you at that point, and I could say to you, how are you feeling about it? And you could say, I'm not feeling clear about it either. And at that point, we can say, okay, great. What about Tuesday? Look at the calendar and see if we can bring this back up on Tuesday at 10 o'clock or whatever. What's underlying is a deeper level of this. There's many, many different layers to this. One is it's really conscious communication, and it's conscious listening, and it's really hearing where the other person is at. This is so, so important. And the other thing that is very important is that from an energetic level, and most of you know that I kind of work from an energetic level, means that when you have a thought and you leave it undone, it's like a fragment on your hard drive on your computer. Have you ever defragged your hard drive on your computer? And if you haven't, it would be a good idea to do that. You can go Google it. At any rate, when your computer has a whole lot of fragmented programs or incomplete processes, what happens is it slows down. It becomes cluttered. It becomes sluggish. It doesn't work as efficiently. Think about yourself and what's in your head and all the unfinished business that you have going on. All of the dangling participles, if you will, that are hanging there because you don't know what to do, you didn't get approval from somebody else, blah, blah, blah. And this really messes up your head. It really takes away from your clarity. It takes away from your pristine communication. It takes away from you being able to hear other people because you're too busy trying to clean up all of those unfinished dangling participles. So this is, did I not say that word right?
Close enough.
Okay. Yeah, whatever. So the bottom line is that you will find that when you do this, you are going to be so much happier. You'll be so much clearer. You will be really more zippy and sharper in your mind. Part of a confused mind and part of what keeps us from not having as great a memory as we would like, in addition to a whole bunch of other things, which we could talk about at some other time, is that we have too many unfinished businesses going on in our head, so to speak. And by businesses, I mean thoughts. So if you look at it from an energetic standpoint, it's fragmented. What the body likes, the smoothness and the
lack of friction.
Yes, but there's a word I'm looking for. It's like the flow. The flow is really most profound when we are clear about who we are, where we're at, what we want, what's next, and then we have a plan. You don't have to have the answer. You just have to have a willingness to say, okay, I don't know the answer right now, but I will have the answer the next time. And if the next time that you put on the calendar doesn't work, and I've gone through a lot of things in my head, but I'm still ruminating over that. So let's make it on Thursday instead of Tuesday or whatever. So you want to close up those gaps. You want to finish off. You want to put an end to the fragmentation. You want to put a clarity inside your own head, which will allow you to be more structured, if you will, on a really, really high level.
Or more focused.
Yeah. So that means that when you are that, you will hear better, you will listen better, and you will be able to respond way differently. And here's the other thing. When we are overwhelmed with all this data and all this stuff that's going on, we just don't take the time, because we don't feel like we have the time because we're too overloaded, to really sit and listen to somebody. How often do you just sit down with no noise, no TV, no phones ringing, no children screaming, no music on, no nothing, and just sit there and speak to somebody? We are inundated with distractions over and over and over again. And if you really want to increase the depth of your relationships with yourself, your partner, your business, with your children, then you take away as many of the distractions as you possibly can, look at each other in the eyes, and have a conversation. And the feedback is the critical piece. Feedback to the person what you think you heard them say, and let them verify whether that is true or not. And if it is not, then go back to the drawing board until you make sure that you're both in agreement with what it is each other's saying. It does not mean you have to agree with them. So take a breath. I'm not saying you have to lay down and be a doormat or something. You can just agree to disagree in that moment, but at least there's completion right there.
Okay, I have a couple of ground rules that I think might be applicable. Yes, ground rules.
Okay, bring them up.
So the first and biggest one that I could think of is when you're having any conversation, no phones in your hand, no beepers, no anything. Do they still have beepers? None of that stuff, so that you're completely present. If your phone rings and it's across the room, you don't go and pick it up. It'll wait, and you stay 100% present. And I think that in and of itself, given all the distractions you were just talking about, would be really, really cool. And the second thing is that when you were speaking about all the different thoughts that we have lots of different thoughts hanging around. Underlying each of those thoughts is an emotion, because each of those thoughts generally will create an emotion or will be a trigger for some past program or whatever, which will create an emotion. So in the conversation, I think in order to be authentic and to be real with your partner, and I actually did this during our conversation yesterday when it dawned on me and I said, there was something in this conversation that made me afraid of blah, blah, blah. So that being honest emotionally about where your emotions are while you're having this conversation. Now, it may be just a business thing where there are no emotions, or it's a personal thing, there are emotions, whatever. But the idea is to be as expressive and authentic and keep going deeper to express where you're at so the other person can really get that. And the last thing I want to say, everything we've said here goes quadruple for any of your business conversations, because there you will not, if you're talking to your boss or to a coworker, most likely you don't have the degree of connection with them that you have with your partner. So all of these things get amplified, and the necessity of being on the same page and being in alignment is even greater.
It's very, very true. I just wanted to interject one little thing. You said if you're a business and there's no emotion, it's impossible not to have emotion. So it's there. It just may not be in your conscious awareness. So the number one thing here is that you have to be aware. Awareness is the number one key to resolving your conflicts, regardless of what they are, whether it's in communication, whether it is in your money, it just doesn't matter. Communicating with yourself first is really key. So as he was saying, it's really important that you have a sense of what it is that you are really feeling. So yesterday, when this little experience was occurring, there was a lot of you said, you said, you said. And when you ask yourself, what's this trigger really about? Then you start to go a little bit deeper within yourself to where you can look at it. And one of the things that I really acknowledge you for, Raphael, is because after a while, you finally said, I realized it brought up a fear. And when that occurred, everything inside of me shifted because I didn't have to feel defensive or put a wall up. I immediately experienced compassion. Oh my gosh, he's feeling uncomfortable about something. And the part of me that just wanted to love him more because he was so authentic really made a difference. And being that vulnerable isn't always easy. We know that. But we never, ever let the fear stop us. If we let the fear stop us, we will not grow into the person or the people that we really are and that we're really capable of being. We don't have the life that we really want if we can't be impeccable and authentic. So 4 of my favorite words are awareness, authenticity, empowerment, which creates transformation. It creates a life that transforms into the life that you've always wanted to live. And it happens because you take these steps and you follow through even when you're not feeling like it. It doesn't matter if you're afraid. Acknowledge it and move on. It doesn't matter if you're not in the mood. Oh, well. your own self-discipline, your own decision-making process is what's going to increase your feeling of self-empowerment, of self-love, if you will. It heightens your own sense of value when you say something and you follow through. So let's just say that from this listening today, you decide, okay, I'm going to really pay attention to what somebody, whomever it may be, your mother, your father, your partner, your children, I'm going to really stop everything and look at them and listen. And if you make that agreement, daggone it, if you get triggered, you just don't run back to your old patterns just because you got triggered. Be who you are, not who your programs are. Your programs will make you run back to where it is that you were because you want some kind of relief. Be willing to face the discomfort and then move on. Be willing to walk through that because that's what creates your mastery. If you want to be amazing at communication, if you want to really have a partnership with someone, primarily yourself, or at least with yourself first, then you have to really be present and listen, feedback, and get the responses that other person or the experience is showing you, and then communicate that back to make sure that everything is copacetic, everything is on the same page. And what'll happen is you will feel better internally and you won't bolt back to old programming just because you were uncomfortable for a few minutes.
That's very powerful because it's so easy to just jump back into programmed, unconscious ways. And defending ourselves is one of the things that the ego really likes to do because nobody likes to be vulnerable or whatever. We're just about out of time for this segment. I have one more thought that I had and I just want to share. When you were talking about the conversation going to he said, she said, we said, blah, blah, blah. If you get to the point in a conversation with partner, boss, whatever, what did happen to me when Isati said that in the midst of this whole thing was, what's the point? That's like an immediate red flag. It's like an immediate tip-off that we're trying to justify that we're right. It's that would you rather be right than happy thing that I was talking about before. That in and of itself, you did this, you didn't do that, you went here, blah, blah, blah. That's a tip-off that you're in that trigger and will help you get to the awareness that we were just speaking about before.
That's really awesome because you do know when any of us are blaming anyone else, we know we're in defense mode, which means that we're afraid that we kind of maybe messed up or we didn't get it right or some self-denigrating thought. And when we get to that place, we can be pretty defensive. We can be very unkind to ourselves. And when we're unkind to ourselves because it feels so uncomfortable, we like to project it on someone else so we think we're not feeling it. But we do anyway.
We sure do. And we are now at the Ask Isatis stage of our program. And today we have a question from Cynthia from Washington State. And she writes, I've been listening to your podcast since the beginning, and I really love the way you and Raphael communicate and augment each other. Well, I appreciate that. And I know Isatis does. At least we're trying as best we can. So my question, says Cynthia, what would you say are the biggest red flags to watch out for in my or any relationship? My partner has so many ups and downs.
First of all, Cynthia, you are not the Lone Ranger. Every relationship has a million ups and downs. It's not that you're having them, it's how you're going to perceive them and how you're going to ride the waves of your relationship. So if you feel like you're diving off the diving board and going splat, then every up and down is going to be very painful. If you get on the roller coaster, you know a roller coaster, it goes up and it goes down and it goes around and it whatever. It's a fairly smooth ride, relatively speaking. Well, when you realize that things are going to come up in relationships, because remember, my favorite thing is that relationships our very own self-development course. So you're with someone to help you see the parts of you where you still have things that you've not made peace with within yourself, and it looks like it's over there. So one of the things you do is start doing some deep inner personal work about the things that are triggering you. When you see the things that are triggering you, then look at that. And like we said earlier in this particular podcast, is look at what's underneath, what kind of fear, it's virtually always fear, which kind of fear that's got you acting or feeling the way that you do. Sometimes people don't tell the truth to each other because they are afraid. And most all of the time, I've never seen a relationship where all of the truth was told all of the time. And that could be another whole show in and of itself. But the bottom line to this is that red flags is when you notice that you're pretending to be somebody that you aren't over and over and over again. When you're hiding things from your partner, when you are feeling ashamed about the way you are, and so you sneak around doing things, no matter what that might be. I'm not necessarily speaking about cheating or any of that kind of stuff, but just things like being on your computer when you said you were going to be doing something else or whatever. I mean, you can probably think of things. So it's about telling the truth. Another thing is that when you are not taking the time to be with each other or make the time to be with each other, that's a flag. That's a signal that you two have deprioritized your relationship. Now, occasionally there are times when that has to happen. Let's just say that your work, you have a really big project and you've got to get that done over whatever period of time. But if your general attitude or your general way of being together is to, for lack of a better term, be roommates, then have a conversation about that. Are we both okay with being roommates with each other? Because I noticed that we're not really doing things together so much, and we're not making the time to have conversations and sharing and things that are deeper and have more power and substance to them.
And what I wanted to say is that if you contrast that to the way you were when you first got into a relationship, how you always wanted to be together, how you were so connected. And now if you're doing things separately, that is a major, major tell that things have shifted. And that, to me, would mean that if you really care about the relationship, that you examine and you talk to your partner so that you can remedy that.
I agree with you, and I think the key piece of what it is that you said is that you talk to each other. Because some people, I know lots of couples that they pretty much live their own lives. I mean, they both work in different places, they do different things, and they come together some of the time because that's all they need or maybe all they want in relationship. Not every person is designed for a 24/7 kind of relationship. So it comes back to knowing yourself and having the awareness of what really makes you happy. But the key to this is you have to know yourself and you have to communicate and you have to listen to what the other person is saying. Because many people that I have coached have said, I had no clue. This actually just happened the other night at Meetup. I had no clue he was like this or he would want that or blah, blah, blah. Because they didn't really communicate about the things that we don't think about at that time. So having a lot of deep introspection with each other is really helpful and important to make sure your values are the same.
And then look at your role in this. Rather than saying he changed, he did this, he did that. Take a look inside because you know that whatever's going on in you is being mirrored back to you in whatever the issue is, so that you can take a look and take responsibility and become aware of what it is that's happening inside. It's a complicated subject, and I don't mean to go off on it.
So I want to leave this little section with a suggestion that you go to our website, www.isatis.com, and on the front page there is a free giveaway that's called the 8 Signs That Your Relationship is in Trouble. It's a very powerful, succinct way of just some of the clues that'll let you know if it's really in trouble or if something's going on that's really not related that seems like it's about the relationship.
And know that no matter what you see there, with awareness, communication, and intention to make it better will help. It's not endless. It's not hopeless. And we're now going to go to the part of the show which is actually my favorite, and that's hearing the question of the day, because these are very, very powerful, and I always pay attention to these.
Okie dokie. So here we go.
No pressure.
On me?
On you.
Nah, can't even spell the word. What would it take for me to really listen and hear my partner? What would it take for me to really listen and hear my partner? And remember that when you ask this question, you are asking it rhetorically. You're not necessarily expecting an answer right then. But when you ask that question with a heartfelt feeling with it, like let's just say your partner is just driving you nuts right now. You're triggered and they're saying things you don't want to hear. And you therefore are not really hearing what it is that they're saying, because remember that what they're saying may not have anything to do with their words. It has to do with what's underneath those words. And that's when you get to be very perceptive and open up your level of compassion. What would it take for me to really listen and hear my partner right now? And just relax yourself and see what occurs in the next several minutes, the next several hours, and the next several days. In that moment, you might still be kind of overloaded. But the next time it comes up, watch how differently you may handle it.
Great. Okay, we're going to wrap it up now. And I just want to tell everyone that next week, our show is going to be about profound love without attachment. And then the week after that, which is funny because I had already scheduled it before we spoke about it today, is it better to be right or happy? So that'll be on June 25th, and the profound love will be on June 18th. So we hope that you'll be able to tune in for those and listen. And lastly, I really recommend that you go to isatis.com and find the 8 Telltale Signs ebook. It's very powerful, and I know you'll get a lot out of it. So Isatis, any parting thoughts?
Just remember to share this with your friends and maybe even with your partner, and put it on your Facebook page or Instagram or wherever you spend most of your time, and know that we appreciate you and we are so grateful that you are in our lives. So until next time, feel a hug.
We will see you soon. Take care.
Take care.